On this episode of the Red and Gold Report, we're going to be looking at the recent Chiefs news, including a storm of rumors, and we're going to be reviewing the 2021 season for the Chiefs running backs and quarterbacks and previewing the offseason at both of these positions. So, first up in the news, we have got to talk about the situation with Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy that is absolutely blowing up around the internet. Last Tuesday, an article came out on the website Chiefs Kingdom editorial board. It was a list of supposed accusations against Bieniemy that were as long as a CVS receipt. But maybe the most important one was it claimed that there's this big beef going on between Eric Bieniemy and quarterback Patrick Mahomes. So of course, this set off a firestorm of online videos and articles by Chiefs pundits who acted like the offseason is just a bad reality show called Desperate Chiefs Lives of Kansas City or something. I mean, it was pretty ridiculous. But I looked at it, I read it, and I thought, you know what? This is a bogus website with no real sources. Why is this going all over the internet? And of course, it appears I was right because the article was taken down just days after that. So here's the thing. I'm not going to pretend like rumors are facts because you know what? I'm not in middle school, but at this point, there actually may be something brewing between Bieniemy and the team. So putting aside all of the rumors, what can we actually know about this situation involving our offensive coordinator? Well, I think three things. Number one, we could all plainly see the horrific play call at the end of the first half in the AFC Championship really sank the momentum for the Chiefs and kind of started costing us the game. We could all also see that something was off with the offense the rest of the game after that point, and we could all see that the Chiefs offensive coaches just refused to run the ball in the second half. Basically, really bad offensive coaching in the championship game was a big reason why the Chiefs were at home during the Super Bowl. So can we believe that anger between Mahomes, Reed, and Bieniemy from that loss could be spilling over into the offseason? Okay, that sounds plausible, just circumstantial, but plausible. Number two, timing is becoming weird at this point. At this point in the offseason, we are at a time when all the head coaching vacancies have been filled, the vast majority of coordinator positions have been filled, and teams have completed much of their assistant coaching hires. So there's no way around it. It's getting kind of suspicious that the Chiefs have not yet re-signed Bieniemy. And number three, something is going on between Bieniemy and Andy Reid. Here's how I know. On one side, it seems like Andy had not decided he was going to let Bieniemy go right after the season because, hey, he didn't replace Bieniemy with quarterbacks coach Mike Kafka, who became the offensive coordinator in New York, and that would have been a natural progression of who to hire next. But at the same time, Reid and Bieniemy have met. They're going to meet again pretty soon, which makes it appear like Andy is not sold on bringing him back either. So even if we just get rid of all the rumors and we just stick to facts and things we can know, at this point, something weird is happening between Bieniemy and the team. Putting aside all the online chatter, my best guess is that Andy Reid is still actually making his mind up, and Bieniemy may or may not be back as the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs next season. And hey, if you want the best weekly Chiefs news brought to you on the interwebs every week, subscribe to the Red and Gold Report on YouTube. Hit that little notification bell on YouTube to get all the latest up-to-date Chiefs news videos. In other news, Chiefs defensive backs coach Sam Madison is going to become an assistant defensive coach down in Miami. It actually makes a lot of sense as Madison was a Pro Bowl corner in Miami during his playing days. In other news, there was a report online that Patrick Mahomes had actually asked his fiance and his brother to no longer attend the games this year. Now, this ended up being false, of course, but it actually is a pretty decent idea as these two wannabe TikTok stars, they just keep causing problems at all the games. In not so good news, corner Chris Lamons has been arrested after turning himself in on battery charges. An incident in Las Vegas occurred around the time of the Pro Bowl and was more widely headlined in the news as involving New Orleans Saints superstar running back Alvin Kamara. Now, Lamons is an exclusive rights free agent for the Chiefs, which means he's not currently signed, and he likely won't be back after this. And you know what? Oh dear Chiefs, pretty pleased with a cherry on top. Stop signing these guys who keep getting in trouble. Like, pump the brakes on the rap sheets, right? In other news, the Chiefs players voted safety Tyrann Mathieu as the most valuable player with the Derek Thomas Award recently, and linebacker Nick Bolton as the top first-year player with the Mac Lee Award. Now, both are good players, and man, I really loved Nick Bolton's rookie season. But while I thought Bolton was amazing, Creed Humphrey was just he was better. And even though it was a down year for Mahomes, it's really hard to argue that Tyrann Mathieu is a more important player to the team than Patrick Mahomes. So with the weekly news in the books, we're spending time each week examining a position group or two, reviewing how it went for 2021 and previewing how it might go during that position's changes in the offseason of 2022. Free agency is just weeks away, so to help us get through these, we're actually going to be taking running backs and quarterbacks this week. Let's start with the running backs. How'd they fare in 2021? Well, here's the thing about trying to evaluate the Chiefs running backs from last season. All four of the guys that got used last season at running back had really pretty similar outputs. Like, there's no Derrick Henry in this group, and none of them are horrible. And the thing about trying to evaluate players that are that similar, well, there's a lot of bias involved in deciding the ranking of who's best to worst. Now, the front office is going to be biased towards Clyde Edwards-Helaire because they spent a first-round draft pick on him, and they want to be right. Now, the coaching staff, I think, is a little biased towards Darrell Williams because they've been developing him from an undrafted player for years now. Some fans are a little bit biased towards Gore or McKinnon because they had great stories last year about getting picked up basically off the street, plugging in, and playing well in roles. So what we actually need is some sort of real data that tells us who played the best. Now, I'm going to show you a spreadsheet here. And while this spreadsheet proves that I am the biggest nerd of all time, what I'm actually trying to accomplish is to decide who played the best from an objective statistical standpoint instead of just my own personal bias. So the columns here are different areas of their play that we can objectively rank them in. First to best. First, second, third, fourth. So we've got an average run yards per carry in the regular season, Pro Football Focus run grade, Pro Football Focus pass block grade, PFF receiving grade, average yards per reception, then big plays per touch is how often they went over 20 yards every time they touched the ball, then playoff performance is just yardage and overall impact during the playoffs. And yes, I know I'm leaving out touchdowns and overall yards, but that's actually on purpose since those are dependent on how many carries, how many touches the coaches are giving each player. And we're trying to take that out of it. So we put all this data together, and here's our final rankings. So we can objectively say that last season, Derek Gore had a slight edge as the top running back. He did the most with every touch he got on the Chiefs running back committee. Jerick McKinnon came in a close second. Then Darrell Williams was third, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming in a close fourth. Now, there's two things that jump out to me about these rankings. The first thing is that the top three players are now all free agents, which means there's a lot of decisions to make about this group heading into the offseason. The second thing about this is that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the starter last year. He will presumably be the starter next year. He's making the most money. He's a former first-round draft pick, but he played the worst of the four. Yes, it was always weird to take a player with his size and speed in the first round, and that's not his fault, and he's not a bad player. However, it is the organization's responsibility going forward to recognize the reality of what happened last season and that he was outplayed by three different players. Okay, so with that in mind, with that ranking in mind, and knowing Gore, McKinnon, and Williams are all going to be free agents, what would I do with the running backs this offseason if I was the Chiefs general manager? Well, I would actually let Williams walk. I would trade Clyde away for a mid-round draft pick. I'd bring back Gore and McKinnon at near league minimum deals. Then there's this thing that happens with running backs every single year if you watch free agency. It's like a game of musical chairs where there's a few proven backs left without a chair, without a team. And at the end of the offseason, they're just frantically looking for a chair to sit down in. They're just looking for a deal no matter what it is. And you could possibly get a player like that for near veteran minimum late in free agency if you just have patience. Some of these players might be the Colts' Marlon Mack, or the 49ers' Raheem Mostert, or Chargers' Justin Jackson. You could all get them at maybe great deals later in the offseason. You never know, but there's potential there, and one of those guys might be in that sort of price range. So basically, this plan would mean that you have three proven backs, but you would spend as few resources as possible at the running back position to leave more money and more picks for positions like receiver and the entire defense. Now, do I think that the team is actually going to do this? Absolutely not. I think, of course, they're going to bring Clyde Edwards-Helaire back as the starter and sign two of the other three. Now, shifting to fullback, the Chiefs are one of the last teams in the NFL to deploy a fullback at all. Michael Burton only actually still played 106 offensive snaps. However, he graded as the top fullback in the NFL. He played special teams, and as you saw, he was absolutely excellent excellent carrying the ball in short yardage scenarios. He was on a 1-year veteran minimum deal last year, and it'd be a big win if the Chiefs could bring him back at that level for 2022. I mean, the whole thing about this offseason is you're going to have to be thrifty so you can actually still bring in a few impact players. Next, let's talk quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes is the face of the NFL. He's a generational talent on a 10-year deal that's the biggest in NFL history. But what happened last season? Well, in his 4 seasons as a starter, in 2021, Mahomes had his most interceptions in a season. He had his lowest average yardage per completion. He had his lowest completion percentage and his lowest PFF grade. It is safe to say it was his worst season as a pro. Now, why? Why did that happen? Well, to me, as Patrick watched the defense really struggle historically early in the season, he began to press in order to make up for them. That led to mistakes that were made worse by the coaching staff not committing to run the ball, which led to defenses being able to scheme out the deep pass, which really constrained what he could do. So yes, it was his most difficult season as a pro. But let's not overreact here. If you were about to start a franchise from scratch, he is still who you would pick number 1. In the NFL last season, Mahomes had the 4th most passing yards. He was tied for 4th most touchdown passes and 3rd most completions. And let's just remember, Patrick Mahomes just came within 1/2 of going to his 3rd straight Super Bowl in a row. I mean, look for a big bounce back year in 2022. At backup, Chad Henne is a free agent, and even at 36 years old, I don't see why the Chiefs wouldn't bring him back as the second stringer on a deal worth a hair more than veteran minimum. I mean, he's just so familiar with the system at this point. But what do you think? What do you think about the running backs and quarterbacks? What are the running backs you would bring back? Do you think we should draft a running back? Do you think we should sign one in free agency? What do you think of Clyde Edwards-Helaire 2021 season? You got to leave a comment for me right in the comment section here. And what do you think about the backup quarterback situation? Should we bring Chad Henne back or maybe somebody else? Or does it just not matter if Mahomes gets hurt? Is the season gone anyway? Thanks for watching the Red and Gold Report. Make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and go Chiefs!